We got the one and only Scoop B, Brandon Robinson, joining us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. NBA All-Star Weekend is done, so now we head down the tenuous stretch run. 20-some games for a lot of these teams, and Scoop B joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Brandon, how you doing on this Monday?
Man, I'm recovering. How are you?
Recovering, jeez. You now Dashawn was sick last week. What was your excuse?
I'm still in Charlotte, and it was I heard there was some basketball game that was played in Charlotte or something like that. Sources say so. We covered a long weekend of mixing, mingling, and spending time with family and friends in between, and trying to, and also actually covering and talking to people throughout the process. A lot of different events going on, and in between the game. Went to a couple parties, did a ton of interviews while I was there. So a lot of sleepless nights. I can tell you that on Friday into Saturday, I was running on 2 hours of sleep on the Saturday during the day. So I slept in yesterday, and
Nice.
I'm glad to be on the show with you guys. I would have no other way.
Well, we appreciate you joining us. So just give us some general takeaways from All-Star Weekend. There's a lot of stuff going on, from newsworthy stuff, the guys just doing different things, whether it was, stuff on the court, guys doing stuff for charity. What are some of your takeaways from Charlotte for this All-Star Weekend?
Well, it was interesting to watch Anthony Davis and LeBron sit on a bench together as teammates, and they're not actually teammates. That was interesting. It was great to see Dirk Nowitzki and Dwayne Wade be sent off the right way in their last season. And additionally, I think the world began to see Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Milwaukee Bucks, how talented he actually is. And I will gather that in the second half of the season, I've said this to a few friends, but if he shows out in the All-Star game and he carries that over into the second half of the season, he is an MVP candidate. Everybody pays attention to James Harden, who's a fan favorite, and Paul George is starting to heat up. But Giannis Antetokounmpo was somebody to be reckoned with too. He plays for a smaller market team, but he's the truth, and he's been the truth.
Is Giannis your midseason MVP right now, or you got somebody else in the lead?
I think Giannis, I've gone on record and said that Giannis Antetokounmpo was my preseason favorite as the MVP. I also said that the Boston Celtics, Kyrie Irving, could hit that stride. I was a little hesitant as it related to James Harden because of the personnel that either didn't return or, there were injuries in that season. But if I go with what I initially said about Giannis Antetokounmpo, then I'd be right at season's end as the potential NBA MVP. So I'm sticking with my gut there, and we'll see what happens. But, James Harden and Paul George are great players, too. So I wish all three of them the best. So,
big picture, looking at the Bucks heading into the second half, how do you rank the hierarchy of the Eastern Conference between the Bucks, the Raptors, the Celtics, and the Sixers? Because no offense to the Pacers, I know they're in the top five, but I think we all agree that when they get to the postseason, then they're going to start showing that they just don't have the firepower the other four do.
Well, I'll say this. I think that the Philadelphia 76ers did a great service for themselves in acquiring Tobias Harris in the trade that with the Los Angeles Clippers. You added a four-headed monster that includes Ben Simmons, as well as Jimmy Butler and Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris. I think a lot of people have paid attention to the Toronto Raptors because, they have a certain all-star on their team in Kawhi Leonard, but as well as Kyle Lowry. And I do like the trade that they made in acquiring Marc Gasol. I think that's going to be a great move come playoff time. I got playoff experience. The way I would rank them, I'll rank them in any which way, but I think you got to give Milwaukee more credit. And you had two all-stars in Chris Middleton and Giannis Antetokounmpo playing last night. I think Milwaukee's going to get more attention on them, and I think they're starting to get people's attention. So if I had to rank, I would put Toronto as 1. I would put Milwaukee as 1A. I think that Boston is going to surge in the second half of the season. I think they've been playing beneath their privilege, and I think they're still trying to figure things out. I put Philadelphia at number 2. I think that Philadelphia will have something to prove in the second half of the season, but you can't sleep on a smaller market team in Milwaukee, and I wish people would stop saying that. You look at the Denver Nuggets and Jokic, and I think that him playing in the All-Star game is great. I think Jokic and Giannis are in two similar situations. They're legitimately stars in smaller market teams. So I want Milwaukee to they need to put some more respect on their name, and I hope that happens and they continue to win.
Brandon, looking at the trade deadline that just passed, there were a lot of moves that were made around the league to kind of position teams for the stretch run, but not only that, but for the future and for the offseason. When talking about the Knicks in particular and the Porzingis move, what did you and I know that you were on top of that before it even happened, by the way.
Yes, sir.
What did you believe as far as the Knicks moving on from such a young upcoming talent and what their plans are for the offseason?
I think the New York Knicks are in a similar situation that the Los Angeles Lakers were in last season, going into the offseason and acquiring LeBron James. I think when you look at the Knicks, they're losing. They don't have the best record. They're hoping to get Zion, but I'll add that, people want Zion. Zion is coveted over. I actually think in the long term, I think R.J. Barrett is a better long-term fit. I also think Jay Morant is a guy out of Murray State that is slept on. I think he can legitimately be the next Damian Lillard or the next Russell Westbrook. And, the Knicks have a point guard in Dennis Smith Jr., so I don't know if they really need help there. But when you look at the New York Knicks, one thing I'll add is this. While I've gone on record and said that the Los Angeles Lakers is a destination that Kevin Durant will ultimately want to go to, I also have said in recent days that you look at the Knicks and you look at Royal Ivey. Pay attention to this name. Royal Ivey, the assistant coach of the New York Knicks, will be very instrumental in potentially luring or at least recruiting Kevin Durant to come to the New York Knicks. Those guys go back to the days of Texas, and I'll tell you that Kevin Durant is actually in Royal Ivy's wedding this summer. They're best friends, and don't sleep on the notion that won't be part of a recruiting tactic that the Knicks will use. The Knicks have the framework to make things happen, and I said the Lakers are it. Don't sleep on the Knicks as a potential heavy recruiter for Kevin Durant in the offseason. I think the Knicks are in a good situation. Like I said, they're following the blueprint that the Lakers did in acquiring LeBron James this past summer.
Yeah, it's funny now you look at the Knicks and the Nets are two teams that maybe a year or two ago you would look at and say, well, they're crazy to think that in a couple of summers they're going to be in position to land, marquee free agents. But the Nets are in the playoffs right now if it started today. And the Knicks have shed a lot of money, and there are a lot of whispers about a Kyrie Irving or a Kevin Durant or somebody like that playing in the Garden next year. So those two franchises look bright. But when you look at Anthony Davis, and remember, he was the guy that everybody was talking about may move. Ultimately, it didn't happen. Were you surprised that Anthony was so open about talking about his upcoming, trade in the offseason? Everybody expects him to be traded in the offseason. Were you surprised at how open he was about talking about it?
No, I wasn't surprised about Anthony Davis being open, and I'll tell you why. This was the first time that Anthony Davis actually said anything publicly about wanting to go to another team. The plan kind of backfired in a sense, or at least in a trade sense, because he requested the Lakers. He's represented by Clutch, which is Rich Paul's agency, and Rich Paul also represents LeBron. And I think that ultimately, when you look at Anthony Davis, he's kind of like Kyrie Irving. Is quiet, mild-mannered, and you don't really hear much out of him. And Rich Paul was doing all the talking on behalf of Anthony Davis. But now you're in a situation where you're at media day, and Anthony Davis is asking those questions. If you go back to my reporting as far back as like maybe October 15th, one of the things I said was the two teams that will be in a Anthony Davis sweepstakes will be, one, the Los Angeles Lakers, and two, the Boston Celtics. That the Lakers were going to make a move in acquiring Anthony Davis by the trade deadline. It didn't happen. But this is where the Boston Celtics comes in. Somebody said something about the Lakers, and he said, I didn't rule out Boston. With what I reported, that kind of makes sense because in the offseason, the Celtics will be able to actively go after them. They also have, 4 or 5 draft picks coming up in this draft. And in addition to that, you have assets like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and more. I can tell you that, that's why Kyrie Irving is kind of sitting tight right now, because the chance that those two could potentially play together if Kyrie does stay with the Boston Celtics, kind of scary, man. I think that, the stuff that Anthony Davis is saying and doing, they put it all out there. Now he just has to be in cruise control. Don't get hurt. Say the right things. Don't get caught up in any scandal, and he'll either be a Laker or a Boston Celtic, most likely, it seems.
Brandon, when you look at the second half of this season and you talk about the Milwaukee Bucks, who I agree with you, Giannis is my MVP personally right now. He has his team as the best record in the East. He's taken that mantle of best player in the Eastern Conference post LeBron. With all due respect to Kawhi Leonard, Giannis has been amazing. You look at the moves that the Sixers made. You look at the Boston Celtics drama all throughout, which I do believe at the end of the day they have enough talent to make a run. And obviously we just spoke about Kawhi. But then you look in the West and you look at the Denver Nuggets and Jokic and how he's playing and Jamal Murray. You look at the season that Paul George is having with Russell Westbrook. And then obviously the Portland Trailblazers, everybody thought that they're still having guard problems. Listen, there's number 4 in the West right now. Do you believe at the end of the day we will get something besides the Golden State Warriors holding up the Larry O'Brien trophy?
I'll tell you what. You look at the Denver Nuggets and what they've been able to do. You look at the Golden State Warriors and what they've been able to do. The thing that I'm impressed about with the Golden State Warriors is the fact that they've had turmoil this season, and it's kind of had just like this lull. Like you started out with Steph being hurt, you saw the drama back and forth with Draymond and Kevin Durant, and then you implement DeMarcus Cousins within their system. That's a lot of improvisation on the fly with their professionals. I like the Denver Nuggets. I like that they're able to do it without some big key pieces on that team.
Just added Isaiah Thomas too.
Yes, they did. They added IT. It'd be great to see them do it, particularly because Isaiah Thomas has come back as such a Rocky Balboa story, if you will. It'd be great to see the Denver Nuggets do something, but you get scared because teams do well in the regular season, like you saw the Atlanta Hawks and the Boston Celtics in years past, and then Cleveland runs them out the gym. You saw Golden State handle them maybe a week or two ago. I like to say that I would like to see Denver move forward, but Golden State, they're a team of professionals. But I think sometimes people just think that they have it in the bag. You even saw that in the three-point contest with Steph Curry. People just thought because he was in Charlotte and because, he's just this proficient shooter that somebody like Joe Harris couldn't come in and win it. So it's hard to say. I don't want to put myself on the hook with that. But what I will say is it would be great to see an underdog team do it. Even in baseball, the years ago when the San Francisco Giants, a bunch of guys that had no big name came in and won the World Series. That's great fanfare for the common man to see not the usual suspects go in and do what they need to do.
Brandon Robinson joining us on Boardwalk Honda Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at ScoopB for all of your national NBA perspectives and news updates. Brandon, I want to ask you for a moment about LeBron James because a lot of people were insinuating that he basically built that all-star team on all the guys who could potentially be free agents. That this was partially a free agent recruiting tool. Obviously, he denied it because you don't want to be involved in tampering or anything. But it feels like at this point in LeBron's career, he is looking at himself and the game way differently than he did in his previous stops. Give the audience a little perspective about how LeBron's view of himself and the game and the sport has evolved from when he left Cleveland to go to Miami to when he went back to Cleveland to now being in L.A.
I think LeBron and I are the same age, and we both had a dream and a goal from a child to an adult. I'm not comparing myself to an NBA player, but I've always known my purpose, and that's one thing I've always admired or respected about LeBron because he knows his purpose in life. And that being said, I think that LeBron gets heat for quote-unquote going to L.A. or quote-unquote taking the easy way out. I don't think that's always fair because his time in Cleveland, he was carrying the team for the first time around. And he went to Miami, learned how to win, went to Pat Riley, was with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, and they won multiple championships, and then he came back to Cleveland and then brought that mentality to Cleveland with a young guy and Kyrie Irving and Tristan Thompson and more. It's interesting that level of intensity rubbed off on Kyrie, and he had his issues with his teammates in Boston. That be it as it may, LeBron has a lot of mileage on him. Olympics, playoffs, championships, that's par for the course. It's easy to criticize somebody who has done it their way or has their own brand. And I'll tell you what, I think that time on Christmas when he hurt himself, his groin, gave him a little bit of some time to really slow down and get some perspective. You know, the whole bigger than basketball is really a thing. Like, I think that people like LeBron James, just like the rapper Jay-Z, made basketball and hip-hop cool in the sense of you're building a 401k plan while you're in your career, and you're thinking about the bigger picture. And so I think that it was kind of a blessing in disguise for LeBron to get hurt because he was able to slow down, get some perspective, and go back out there and do what they need to do. But I think that whole Lakers team, I think it's a 2 to 3 year project, and I think that Magic Johnson, LeBron, and company, and Rob Pelinka are going to figure it out. On the Lakers front, I actually ran into Rob Pelinka at Michael Jordan's party, and I said to him, I said, hey, man, I'm sorry you guys didn't get what you wanted, but I wish you guys nothing but the best. And he said, thank you, man. He said, Lakers are going to keep doing what they got to do. You know, Magic Johnson got something to prove as an executive. He's done it as a player. Rob Pelinka is transferring over from, an agent to a general manager. That's a huge process that everybody on that organization has to make happen. And, hopefully for them, they find a way to figure it out. But the Golden State Warriors doesn't mean forever. And they're not as invincible as some may think. And, I mentioned the Denver Nuggets, but one other team I'll mention is the Lakers. I believe that if the Lakers actually don't have to play the Warriors in earlier rounds, this could be a conference matchup between the Lakers and the Warriors. I spoke to a Lakers assistant coach over the weekend who said to me, their goal right now is to get a 7th seed, at least. They don't want to be an 8th seed. Because if the Warriors are at 1 and the Lakers are at 8, you see what's going to happen. So the 7th is what I'm told by a Lakers assistant coach they want to make happen. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with LeBron, Magic, Pelinka, and company.
Talk with Brandon Robinson at Scoop B on Twitter, at Scoop B. Also, check out the Scoop B Radio podcast. Brandon, last but not least, we had an uproar this past week here in Philly because Markelle Fultz was traded to the Orlando Magic, and he said some comments in his press conference, which I personally believe they were overblown. But what did you take from those comments? And at this point, can't everybody just move on? By the way, you were first to report and be on the whole topic of Markelle being traded. Even when there were rumors that the Sixers didn't wanted to hold on to him, you maintained that he would be moved.
Yes, he wanted to be moved, and I can tell you that the Miami Heat and the Orlando Magic both had interest. Right before the trade deadline, I had gotten some intel about the Orlando Magic, and ultimately that's what went down. And on a personal note, I actually bumped into Elton Brand. Had never met Elton before. Bumped into him at a party, and I said, "Hey, I'm Brandon Scoopy Robinson." He goes, "Oh, I know who you are." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah." He said the Sixers are sending him my tweets. And I don't want to divulge all the information. I respect the confidentiality, but as it relates to Elton and I, he's definitely number one doing his thing as a first-year general manager, and number two, as it relates to Markelle Fultz, I think that Orlando is the best situation for him because it's a smaller market. It's not Philadelphia. It's not the pressure of a northeast city, and I think that this is the first taste that Markelle Fultz is having of kind of being the man or on a team. I mean, you still have Nikola Vucevic on that team, but I hope for Markelle Fultz's sake that he gets it right. I hope that whatever's going on with him, it works. That he gets the help or the training or just the mental capacity to make things happen. And I want to see him win. And I think that that kind of gets lost in the translation with everything that's going on. He's still a person. He's still young, and he's a professional basketball player. Honestly, I love his dribble penetration. He has a good shot, but you want to get him back to how he was shooting in Washington. Legitimately, Markelle Fultz could have a comeback season. If it's not the second half of this season, he definitely has a chance to do it next season. And all the comments that he said, I haven't seen everything. I've been so very busy, but I can only imagine in the age of aggregation and sound bites that context is important. He has a fresh start, and maybe just continuing to be quiet and low-key may work for him. And maybe that's a learning experience right before the second half of the season that he'll take, and he'll figure it out.
Follow him on Twitter at ScoopB for all your NBA information and news and reporting. He was on the ground in Charlotte this past weekend. Brandon, we appreciate you joining us, even though it's been a busy weekend for you. And look forward to talking to you down the stretch heading into the postseason. My brothers, thank you so much. And make sure y'all also subscribe to the Scoop Radio podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn app, or visit scoopbradio.com. There it is. He is the man, Brandon Robinson, joining us on the Boardwalk on the Hotline on 97.3 ESPN.